I did not see that coming.
You may have to sue the company in order to get what you think's the right amount out of your loss.
An insurance company, if they hear someone say, this is not being handled the right way, and we feel like this needs to be brought to the Department of Insurance, they have alarm bells that go off saying, uh-oh, this isn't going away.
And so consumers sometimes will call because they can't get a hold of their agent. Then they call and they're upset, and then that leads to an investigation. You're right. Then they don't want to see my face.
Husband to one, father to three, grandpa to seven, outdoorsman, a man who attempts golf like the rest of us, and the last face you will see if you're in big trouble with the Department of Insurance. Director of Department of Insurance, Dean Cameron is here. Director Cameron, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, we're both here at the Big I in Coeur d'Alene right now. Of course, you'll be a panelist later today. When you do these speeches, people see you talk and they think, oh, this guy's got it all together. But you had to start from somewhere. And you, third generation agent, I believe.
Right.
Walk me through your progression of the insurance industry and how you got to where you are today.
It really started, I always thought I could do the agent stuff, and I went to school thinking maybe that's where I'd end up. But I was really interested in the law, and I was really interested in politics. And so my major at college was political science, and I got licensed through my father and my grandfather so that I could make some money during the summer and even make some money when I was working or going to school. And then one thing led to another, and I ended up serving in the state legislature. I got appointed in 1991, served 25 years in the state Senate, and loved it, still love it, miss it in many ways. And I had the opportunity a number of times to be the director of the Department of Insurance, but that wasn't where I wanted to go with my career. But it eventually got to the point where I thought, I can't keep running for re-election. My district deserves to have somebody besides Dean Cameron serving there at some point. And so when Governor Otter asked if I'd be willing to step in towards the end of his term, the last 3 years of his term, then I said yes, and was appointed, and I've now been, that was in 2015, June of 2015. So I just passed the 10-year mark.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm now, the average life expectancy of an insurance commissioner is less than 2 years. I'm now the third longest serving commissioner in the United States right now.
Wow.
They move that quickly.
Wow. Is part of that due to the political winds that change in some states?
Oh, yes. Not in some states, they're appointed by the governor like I am. 12 states, they're elected. So sometimes the election turns it over. And, of course, the election of the governor can turn it over, as we've seen as red states turn to blue states and then back to red states. Then the commissioner turns over with that new governor. Some have some board or insulation from the governor in the political process, but I'm not like New Mexico and Florida and a few places like that.
So 91 is when you first got into the legislature?
Yes.
So before that time, had you been working, were you working as an agent before then? Or were you still an agent at that time?
I became an agent in 1983.
Okay.
And had sold, mostly focused on life and health. My father did a lot in the life business and a lot in estate planning. I did some of that, but then really got into the health business. At one point, got licensed with property and casualty to sell crop hail insurance and to do some of the other work. I wasn't as smart as some people, so I thought, well, I'll stick with health insurance, and that was sort of where I did a lot of work with employers and businesses, helping them have appropriate employee benefits, and did a little bit of pension work. Got Series 63 license, so I did a little bit of investment mutual funds, stuff like that. But that was And I love doing that. And it worked well serving in the legislature at the time I started, because we live in a farm community and et cetera. That during January through March was sort of the low part in the insurance business cycle. And so I could go serve in the legislature, I thought, for those 3 months. Turns out serving in the legislature is more full-time than you want to admit or that we want to acknowledge. But it still worked because I was my own boss. I could, if I needed to go to meetings in Boise, I could drive to Boise and, take the time I needed. And I had clients who were great, who liked me serving there. And so it worked out well until we decided to change.
Where was the office located?
I was in Rupert, Idaho. Okay. That's where my office, that's my district was Minidoka and Cassia County, or that's the way it ended. The first part of my service was Minidoka and Jerome County. So.
Okay. So do you feel like the legislature is busier now than it was back then, or has it been about the same where it's that kind of full-time job once you get in?
No, I think it's about the same as far as busyness. There's always lots of things that are going on. And of course, the one thing this legislature hasn't had to face is they haven't had to face a real economic downturn.
Oh.
And I had gone through a couple of them, both under two different governors, under Phil Batt and then under Dirk Kempthorne. Mm. And those sessions are really tough. And I ended up, I was grateful I chaired the Commerce Committee, which had to do with business and insurance for a long time, 6 years. And then I ended up being shifted over and I chaired the JFAC committee, the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee, which is the legislature's budget committee. And for years, together with Maxine Bell from Jerome, the two of us co-chaired that committee. And so that committee meets frequently all year long. We take it into, and we tour facilities, we receive recommendations and requests from state agencies, and we really tried hard to reduce the footprint of government and reduce the overall expenditures, if you would.
Wow. So do you now that you're overseeing the Department of Insurance, how often do you interact with legislators?
Oh, pretty frequently. Particularly those legislators who have an interest in insurance or have a background in insurance, like Representative Redmond, or legislators that on the budget committee or as they're maybe helping you with an issue. Sometimes we have legislators call us because they've got a constituent who's filed a complaint or is having an issue with an insurance company. Mm. And that's a big part of our operation in the Department of Insurance. We have 77 employees.
Wow.
That's the same number we had when we started. We a big share of that is our customer service or a consumer affairs office, which takes complaints, is able to resolve issues. A lot of them get resolved without any fanfare. Some of them take a little more push, if you will, and a little more discussion. And sometimes what the insured wants and what the insurance company can do are two different things. And, somebody gets in a car crash and they think their car is valued at X number of dollars, and the insurance company says, no, Kelley Blue Book says this. And, some of those disputes we can't resolve. Some of them require litigation, and we'll tell them, look, you may have to sue the company in order to get what you think's the right amount out of your loss. But on other cases, we make sure that they're following the provisions of their contract. We make sure they're following the provisions of law, obviously. So that's one component of the Department of Insurance, is our consumer consumer affairs and consumer services. The other is our Company Activities Bureau. They regulate the companies to make sure they're solvent. They make sure they do annual review of their finances. They make sure that they're safe and sound and that they're going to be there to pay your claims. We have our Market Oversight Bureau, which reviews all the rates and the policy filings to make sure that they're using accurate language, that it's not misleading or confusing to consumers, that the rates that they're asking for are actuarially sound, so that they're justified, if you will. We don't have strong authority to reject some of the rates, but we do push back quite a bit and have had some success in that arena. And then something that's not very well known is we have, as part of our department, the State Fire Marshal's office. So the State Fire Marshal goes out and does inspections of causes of fires, particularly if there's a fatality, or if asked by a local unit of government to come in and help determine the cause of a fire.
Wow. The fire marshal, I did not see that coming.
Yeah.
I did know about consumer complaints is what people think of. You have a problem with your insurance company, you call the Department of Insurance.
Right.
What percentage of those complaints would be, I think my car's worth $3,000 more than the carrier says, and what percent would be, whoa, we've got an agent who's defrauding customers and, pocketing checks? Is that infrequent?
It's not infrequent, unfortunately.
Wow.
We have a number of agents that we end up either taking administrative action where we penalize them and revoke their license, or in some cases, criminal action. Wow. Our website has several of those listed. Most of the complaints we get are, I have a disagreement with the insurance company, or maybe somehow, and particularly in auto insurance, the record sort of implies that I'm somewhat at fault. And so, there's a shared responsibility, and people hate that. I particularly don't like it, but that's sort of the way the law has been crafted. And so we get a lot of those kind of complaints. Sometimes we get a lot of complaints where the consumer, first of all, they've had a loss, they're shook up, they're upset, they're concerned, they're afraid of being taken advantage of. So they call in maybe a little bit angry, maybe a little bit emotional. They can't get a hold of the company, or they talk to the company and the first things the company says doesn't really give them any comfort. And I mean, I'll give you an example. I had a loss this year in my house. Christmas Day, all of a sudden I hear a drip. And it turns out I was having a water leak because it was raining. You remember the rainy days there around Christmas. Well, I called my company. The first thing the lady says to me on the phone was, well, your roof is probably old. I said, no, I didn't say who I was. I said, no, wait a minute. First of all, you haven't seen my roof, and my roof is not old. So let's just, if you'll send, let's send somebody in to help us take care of this issue right now so it doesn't get worse. And then you send your inspectors in to see. And of course, the inspection showed my roof wasn't old. But if, so you can kind of understand how consumers get concerned. Sometimes if you're a good agent and 90% or most of those that are in the Big I are good agents, they want to be professional. That's why they join an association that helps them be professional. So most of those agents are responsive and reflective and are great. We do have some agents that aren't that way. And so consumers sometimes will call because they can't get a hold of their agent. The agent isn't calling them back. They've had a loss or they've had something going on, and and then they call and they're upset, and then that leads to an investigation.
Wow.
And so you're right. Then they don't want to see my face.
Well, you get to be the principal of a school that just happens to have a bunch of insurance agents, and a few of them are going to, need to get called down to the principal's office.
And it's an interesting thing too, because most people don't understand this. Sometimes agents will call me. They've found out that they've made a mistake or there's an issue, and we can help them rectify it. But the interesting thing is I end up acting as the hearing officer or the appellate officer. So anytime we have an agent where there's a violation, I get walled off. I'm sequestered. I don't get to see any of the evidence. that all goes through the department under the direction of my deputy director. And then they decide how to proceed. If it gets to a hearing, then I can either appoint a hearing officer or I can act as a hearing officer. But I'm still not able to see the information until it is adjudicated. And then once it's adjudicated, sometimes it appeals to me and I get to review some of it. So that's also a little bit of a challenge as the director. It's not a challenge for the department, but it is a challenge as the director.
What percentage of claims, just roughly, would be related to health insurance, life insurance, anything on that side? And what percentage would be related to your traditional property and casualty side?
Yeah, probably 50% of the claims are property casualty side.
Okay.
And probably the next 40% are health related. Okay. Very small number are life related, but we do have them. I mean, we had a lady whose husband died, and unbeknownst to her, the company had changed. It had been acquired by another company and changed names, and so when it went to bank draft their checking account, the bank didn't accept it because it was a different company, and so it just happened that the following month her poor husband passed away, and so we got to help the life insurance company understand why they got to pay the claim, because it was their misstep. We get to do that a lot, and that's good and that's fun. We get to hold insurance companies accountable.
It must be rewarding to help someone get a life insurance check when they probably need it.
Absolutely.
Rather than slapping someone's hand and saying, "Can you please stop lying?"
Yeah. No, absolutely. And once in a while we have other issues that we're able to help get resolved just by reaching out and sometimes getting the attention of the insurance company. It elevates it. You think about it. You've been around the insurance industry all your life. You know that the insurance company has the base level of folks that are taking the claims, et cetera, and then there's an upper tier, and then it gets moved up to legal, et cetera. So when the Department of Insurance gets involved, the claim automatically gets elevated to a person with a different set of glasses and a different perspective.
Interesting.
Because they're going to look at it and say, "Are we going to lose this in a court of law? And do we want to be sideways with the Department of Insurance?"
Interesting.
Yeah.
So for an insurance company, if they hear someone say, "Listen, this is not being handled the right way, and we feel like this needs to be brought to the Department of Insurance," they have alarm bells that go off saying, "Uh-oh, this isn't going away.
Right.
We should take another look at it."
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes they'll come back to us and say, "Well, we think we're within our rights not to pay the claim, but on this one time we'll make an exception and we'll pay the claim." And of course, for us, we're just happy they paid the claim.
Right.
But nonetheless, and sometimes we find they also know that's part of the Market Oversight Bureau. We found a company that was processing a particular type of claim erroneously on everybody. We actually ended up going back and doing an investigation, and the company ended up paying a fairly large fine. And I find companies and I find agents. I'm not really interested in being a fining agent. I'm more interested in compliance. So we like the motto in our department is we want to be a flashlight, not a hammer. We want to show what the law says. We want to show what the rules say and what they're supposed to do. We have the hammer. We can use the hammer. Sometimes we pull the hammer out of our toolbox and set it on the table. But our goal is to be the flashlight and to help them be compliant, because in a compliant world, and you know this, insurance is about confidence. You have to have confidence that when you send money to a company that they're going to be solvent and be there to pay your claim.
Right.
If you don't have confidence that that's there, you're not going to buy insurance.
Right. The whole system would collapse if
the whole system collapses. So for us, being compliant with the law, that provides that confidence when we can say, yes, the company's following the law. Now, sometimes the law needs to be changed, and sometimes it's not always fair, and laws get passed, and Representative Redmond's an expert in getting that done, but laws get passed that sometimes down the road, life changes and we need to adjust them again.
So you've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've now taken on a new role at the NAIC. What does that stand for? What's your new role there?
It's not really a new role.
Okay.
I'm sorry. The National Association of Insurance Commissioners is the body. Remember I talked about accreditation? So it's the body that determines what those standards are for accreditation. They are all the insurance commissioners across the country. So 50 states plus territories. So we have, Northern Mariana Islands and Guam and Puerto Rico. They're all members of the NAIC. So 56 jurisdictions. In 2022, I was the NAIC president. You get elected secretary treasurer. I got elected in 2018. And then you walk through the chairs of leadership, kind of like you would at the Big I or any other association. And so I got to be the national president in 2022, which allowed me to really go around the country and promote Idaho's philosophy on less regulation, more competitive markets, et cetera. And that was a wonderful opportunity and experience, and I'm still getting to do that because of that experience. I still get, I was just in Houston, Texas last week, where I spoke to a bunch of insurance professionals on market oversight and the appropriate role. It was kind of a fun one. I've had, you said at the beginning I was an outdoorsman. I've had many experiences of being bucked off horses or falling off horses. So I used, because it was all Western themed being in Houston, I used that theory to talk about insurance regulation and comparing it to the many mishaps I've had in falling off horses. So that was kind of fun.
I'm thinking through this analogy, thinking like of states that aren't doing well and how you would abuse the analogy one way or the other.
Oh, yeah.
They're the horse that runs over their agents after they fall off.
Yeah.
No, that's fun. So there's a national reach there. Is that the type of group that you'll stay involved with long term and continue to give back to?
Yeah, no, it's like every association. The more you, or at least in my belief, the more you give to it, the more it gives back to you.
Right.
So we learn, for example, we've been active in wildfires and helping try and get property insurance at lower rates. So with that association, I've learned what Alabama did in their fortified homes program. And so we're trying to promote a fortified homes approach here in Idaho for wildfires. Within the association, several of us, like 25 of us, just went toward the Pasadena fire in California. And we got to see the mistakes that were made there. We got to see the problems that they had there. We got to see where homeowners hadn't mitigated their property. So they had weeds as high as their knees and shrubbery right up next to the houses, et cetera. And of course, those homes burnt down. We also saw other homes who had green space and had mesh in their eaves and, fire-retardant bark, et cetera, that never were burnt. And the fire would jump them and sometimes save the home next to it because the fire couldn't get through it.
Wow.
So those are all learning experiences, and we get to bring back and look at what Idaho's doing in that regard and try and take a free market, less government type approach to what we see in other states.
Wow. Like so at this stage of your career and having the decade of experience in your chair, when something comes up, a guy like you, knowing what you know, who can you call to bounce ideas off of? Who are your peers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. They've been peers in the past, and unfortunately, as I said before, the insurance commissioners turnover. The one that comes to mind immediately is, and I don't know why, but Idaho fit with the southeastern states right from the very beginning. So Mississippi's commissioner, Mike Cheney, who's a very strong free market guy. He and I got along right right from the very beginning. Jim Donlan from Louisiana, other commissioners. Mike's still around, but many of the others are gone. We also have a Center for Excellence at the NEIC, which does data collection and research. They work together with the Institute for Business and Insurance Safety, IBHS, which is funded by the insurance industry, and they test the impacts of wildfires on homes and on property and on building material. They also do that for wind and hail and for hurricanes, etc. So we utilize some of their data, and it's all about sharing ideas and thoughts. And we believe states are the laboratories of innovation. So whether it's healthcare, Idaho's been a leader in developing those type of solutions. Wildfires, we're a leader in trying to develop fire hardening homes. We did a forum in May of last year where we built 2 structures, one built with fire retardant material, one built with traditional material. If you looked at them, and you can go to our website and see the video, you looked at them, they looked identical. We lit them both on fire. It was kind of fun.
Wow.
Governor wanted to do it. They wouldn't let him do it, but he was there. We'd lit them both on fire. The one burnt with traditional material burnt to ground in 20 minutes. Ashes.
Wow.
The other never did catch fire.
Wow.
And they were 5 feet apart. So the embers were flying off of one onto the other, but it didn't. So obviously, those are for local communities to decide their building codes, etc. But it's also really for consumers as we're building, because there really wasn't any additional cost to build one or the other. I mean, maybe a slight difference. So if you're building a home and you're in an area that might be wildfire prone, you'd be wise to build with fire retardant material because your insurance rates will be lower.
Wow.
You'll pay for itself by building with fire retardant material. And that's both in the eaves and the roofing and the siding and et cetera.
Well, I mean, a big part of what an agent does is tries to craft a narrative for the carrier to get to know that unique insured. If an underwriter sees 100 submissions or 1,000 submissions, how do they know any difference unless someone says, oh, by the way, this house is built with that kind of material.
Right.
And here's the study that was done.
Right.
And here's how it didn't burn. That has to, sometimes the carriers are saying, just give us some reason to think this house isn't going to burn down any day now.
Yep.
Well, maybe this is one that'll help.
Yep, absolutely. And we know that's how the industry works. They have underwriters that are paid by the company to determine what the appropriate premium for the risk that they're taking on.
Right.
And whether they want to take that risk on. And so everything that we can provide that helps the agent make that argument or make that case to that insurance company is good.
So
we know that consumers are better off when they're insured. Sorry.
Amen. Amen. And all of our insureds whose houses are having trouble getting insured, this is music to their ears.
Yep, absolutely. Because what's happening now is we're with everything that's been going on in the West, not specifically in Idaho. And by the way, we just embarked on a data call. We don't like doing data calls because that's sort of a big government type of approach. But we needed to do a data call so that we could actually understand the marketplace. We wanted to see how many carriers we had in 2023 versus today, how many are pulling out of the market, how many are just non-renewing people or tightening their underwriting, et cetera. We wanted to have a better understanding to lead to the arguments, what we're proposing. So we've been doing that data collection and hopefully within the next couple months be able to release that data.
Okay. So I've heard that sometimes carriers won't leave the state, but they will put underwriting guidelines in place where essentially they're still there, but they're not writing any business.
Yeah.
Is that a problem from your perspective? How do you view that?
Well, it certainly is a challenge.
A challenge.
We want the carriers to stay in the state. We know under a free market society that the more carriers in the state, the better the competition, the better the rates are. We also know that as some carriers do leave, others will come in, but we prefer carriers to stay in the state, and we're always out recruiting. I'm always recruiting carriers to come to Idaho and to hear our story and to hear what we're doing. So those things are good. We don't like it when carriers non-renew clients. And there are laws specific to block non-renewal. But if they're non-renewing individual clients, we don't often hear about it unless the consumer comes to us and said, hey, X company just non-renewed me. What can you do about it? Sometimes we go back. I had a consumer from Pocatello call me, and he had got a notice from a company who said that they were non-renewing them. And we said, okay, let's check into it. We went to the company. Company says, yeah, because of wildfires in the area. And we said, well, there haven't been any wildfires in Pocatello. What are you talking about? And so they had to backtrack a little bit and said, oh, we kind of misspoke. But there was wildfires 10 years ago, but we've really just decided to tighten our footprint. So we don't like that. We don't like when carriers non-renew somebody.
Right.
But we do understand carriers have to be solvent. And so if they're going through a tight financial crisis, and we've seen 3 carriers in this state that have essentially gone insolvent or stopped writing business because they were going insolvent. And so we don't love it, but that's what has to happen. We actually work with them to help them stop writing business because we don't want them to go and insure somebody and then be out of business 6 months from now.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. So we work with them to make sure there's a smooth transition, sometimes helping them find another carrier to take that business, et cetera. So a carrier that's staying in the state, still insuring their existing customers, but maybe have tightened their underwriting, okay, we can live with that as long as we can find coverage for those people elsewhere. We've seen a lot of, this, some of your listeners will know that in Idaho, we regulate the admitted market, those carriers who have filed to be licensed in Idaho. But there's also a sort of an underground network of what we call surplus lines. These are carriers that are non-admitted, that aren't supposed to be in the state except for hard-to-place coverage. So typically it was, peekaboo streets, legs or knees or whatever or something. What we've found is that those are being used a lot in wildfire areas, particularly in the wilderness areas. And those are that's a very expensive coverage and not as good a coverage.
Right.
And so while we're grateful that we have that option, that's not the ideal. The ideal is a healthy marketplace where we've got lots of competition, where they're recognizing your efforts to harden your home or to create green space or to make sure that your chance of losing your home is lower.
Right. Well, you mentioned the peekaboo streets knees, a very recent version of the Lloyd's of London type coverages that were being done for athletes was, I think it was Jameis Winston, who now is retired from the NFL. But I remember thinking, how can he come back and play another year at Florida State? Because he has an NFL contract. Why would you play another year at college back when they weren't being paid? If you had an NFL contract, you'd risk if you blew out your knee. Well, what was disclosed later is they were buying a 6-figure disability policy through like a Lloyd's of London market so that if he got hurt and his draft stock dropped, he would get millions in a payout. It only makes sense.
Yeah, and by the way, Jameis is playing for the New York Jets.
Oh, that's right. Oh, he's
the same as almost being retired, isn't it? Sorry, Jets fans.
Oh, hey, are you a football guy?
I love football.
Oh, who's your NFL team?
Oh, I don't know that I have a team. I've rooted for the Kansas City Chiefs. I've rooted for the LA Rams. My son loves the Rams. My brother loves the Pittsburgh Steelers, so I can't love them. And I think universally we all hate the Cowboys. But that's, I like players. I'm fond of high character, good players that give back to their community. And so,
well, speaking of character, And well, no, this is just a joke, but they have all these memes roasting the Cowboys on social media, and it says since 1990 the Cowboys have had 0 Super Bowls, or whenever it was they had their last Super Bowl. They've had 0 rings, but Jennifer Lopez has 5.
Yeah.
So everybody is consuming information differently these days.
Absolutely.
I think of myself. On my phone, my Facebook feed will have some articles. I have the Wall Street Journal on my phone, which I am sometimes subscribed to, sometimes not. But the Wall Street Journal has a YouTube channel you can watch and watch their stories on. So everyone's doing information differently. I probably don't listen to as many podcasts as I do audiobooks. I'm listening to a lot of audiobooks all the time. How are you consuming information? What's your preferred platform?
That's a really good question. I'm probably the same boat as you. I listen to more audiobooks than I do podcasts. I do like some podcasts and do try and listen. There's various platforms where you try and get the news. One of the benefits of the NAIC is any insurance news they send to you. So there's every day we get an email with links to various articles that we can click on and look at to see what's going on throughout the country with regard to insurance. And so that I spend a lot of time doing that. The insurance industry supports the timber industry. We have lots of paper. And so we still I still get reams and reams of paper documents to read.
Okay.
So that's still part of life. And I'm old school. I'm old. So I still like the nightly news, even though it's becoming less influential and less accurate all the time.
Yeah. Well, I recently, a friend of mine, I wanted to put a LinkedIn post out there that said, "May you find more support when you lose your next job than this." And then the link showed that Stephen Colbert's show had been canceled,
right? And
only 20 people showed up to protest. But it's not. You think about it. My friend said, "Don't put it on LinkedIn," so I didn't. But realistically, if everyone can watch a show the next morning from their phone, there's just not enough people staying up to watch. The dynamics are changing across the news spectrum.
Well, when you can get the news information in clips and bits and pieces, I talk with my children about how they get their news. They don't subscribe, to any of the cable connections or anything. They don't. Everything is all streamed, and they get their news off of various podcasts and platforms.
Right.
My son goes and works out every day and listens to podcasts while he's working out.
Right.
And that's the future. The world is changing
quickly. Well, let's do this as we kind of land the plane. What are the 3 most recent audiobooks that you're either have finished or you're in process of listening to?
I just finished one called Digital Fortress, a Dan Brown book on, I like government intrigue and stuff like that. I was listening to one on the way up here, and I can't even think of the name, but it is a Tom Clancy book. I listened to one with my wife, so she kind of drugged me into it, called The Boston Girl. That was pretty recent. My wife's from Boston, and so this was on, it was really on the overall impacts during World War I. And
wow.
So it was both historical as well as, so that was pretty interesting. But insurance books, there are insurance books out there, and they'll put you to sleep. So I have to take them in steps and paces,
Hopefully insurance podcasts are a little bit above insurance books on the interesting level.
Yeah.
But when you were saying my wife got me into a book, I shouldn't be surprised because my wife's a big fan of the historical fiction.
Yeah.
She likes timepieces where you're learning about someone's life in the era. I find that I just read biographies all the time. Yeah. I just feel like they're so interesting. And you get to learn about a person's life who's worth writing about through the biography that's written about them.
Yeah. We did one not too long ago called All the Light You Cannot See, I think. And it was really interesting about a blind girl who had to learn how to navigate through the Holocaust and all of that. It was really interesting.
That is the kind of book my wife would sign up. I'll finish with this story and then I'll let you go. We were going to Hawaii for an anniversary years ago. And I don't watch movies very often, but I was watching a X-Men or some just brain dead movie. My wife's watching like The Boy in the Striped Pajamas and she's like weeping on the floor. And I looked over and said, what is going on over there? But she likes those stories. They're powerful.
You'll have to tell her about this one.
Okay.
There's a Netflix movie about it too.
Okay. Okay.
All the Light You Cannot See.
All the Light You Cannot See. Director Cameron, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I really appreciate it.
Happy to do it anytime.